Welcome to another week of Level Up with Matt Rogers. I am your host, Matt Rogers. With me, as always, is the man with the goldish brown beard, the whiz behind it all.
Gold is in it, but
Eli Adelman.
How are you, buddy?
Good.
Yeah.
The golden Jew, Eli Adelman.
There it is.
You are the man.
Yep.
Thanks for always making this great. Today is going to be great because for the first time in podcast history, we have two guests on the same show.
Crazy.
And for those of you who have been following us for the last 3 years, you've noticed that season 3, we've switched to having guests every other Wednesday. And then we do 7 Minutes with Matt on Mondays and Thursdays. So these two guests I met through my best friend, Rex Crane, which, let's be honest, 90% of our guests we've met through Rex Crane because he's freaking awesome. Right. And these two, I'm so freaking excited because we have like music royalty sitting at our table. They're unbelievable. Let me give you some of their stats. And they are a couple. They've been married for 10 years, have 3 beautiful children, that's Jordan, awesome. Frankie, and Jaslyn. All 3 cool names, by the way. There you go. Throw that down. First of all, let's start with Ryan Edgar, my man Ryan. He's worked with Toby Mac, Israel Houghton, Kirk Franklin, Gateway Church, Dark Child, Rodney Jerkins. He's written songs in the last year alone. He's written songs for the Super Bowl, the World Cup, the Ryder Cup, World Series, and the Olympics. If you go across the seas, he's got like Toyota commercials. Like I follow his wife, Nikki Leonti, on Instagram and him. But Nikki was like watching him. No, she was listening to one of his songs on TV, and she wrote like, the joys of listening to your husband's voice on TV. So Ryan's an absolute beast. Nikki is unbelievable. She's a singer-songwriter early on in her career, which we'll talk about. I want to say, I don't know the exact age, but like 10, 11, 12. She debuted her album, or maybe in her teens. And her Christian album debuted at number 7 on the Billboard charts. So she is and was always an absolute beast. Then the Christian church fired her pretty much. We're going to talk about that because that's what Christians do. They eat their own a lot when things don't go the way that they believe.
First canceled, like of the cancel culture?
Oh, dude, she was like the first Christian cancel culture. Yeah. Absolute beast. We're going to get into that. But, dude, since then, it's kind of like, look at God's gifts are without repentance. So he don't take the gift away. So her gift continue to magnify. She's partnered with and worked with. I mean, dude, I'm just going to name drop a few here. How about this? Carrie Underwood, Ludacris, Little Kim, Robin Thicke, Jessie J. She's done a ton on Glee. She's a Disney singer-songwriter and, again, an absolute beast. And they're here with us. Welcome, Ryan Edgar, Nikki Leonti.
Yay!
Let's go. Oh, my God. Is my face red? I'm painting out right now.
Dude, that was awesome.
That was really good.
Thank you for
I
that
got hyped
intro,
on myself listening to you
Dude,
talk about me.
Yeah.
I remember, so Rex talked about you guys. By the way, they're finalists on America's Got Talent. Like, go back and Google them on America's Got Talent. It was unbelievable. So I heard about you guys when you were on America's Got Talent. Rex told me we were doing a thing at like the Grammy Museum or something. He's like, bro, I just got back from watching my friends, Nikki and Ryan. You got to meet them. So I heard about you for years before I actually met you. And now you live like right up the street and we're becoming friends.
I know we're like real friends with you.
Dude, it makes me happy.
Dude, I remember when Nikki was taping something. What show? I forgot what show that was for, but we were on a lot near Universal Studios, and we were down there, and you were taping a show that day. You were totally
I was on a
hosting
Hallmark channel.
Yeah, you were totally hosting, and like you were in front of that house and stuff.
Yep.
And I was like, that's Matt. I was like, because I knew you from seeing you with Rex.
Crazy.
And I was like, that guy's so cool, man. Check him out.
Did I have hair back then or was I bald?
Dude, you're rocking the bald like, dude.
I was so much cooler with hair. No, I'm just kidding.
Whatever. The baldness is beautiful, bro.
You are the man. Dude, I mean, honestly, like, not to sound like hyper spiritual or anything, but like, dude, it's really cool how like God works. How it was like, there's always idea for us to be friends, and it probably took a little longer than it was supposed to because we probably should be friends now for like 7 or 8 years.
Yes.
But we're new friends. I freaking love you guys. I can't look at you without smiling. Like,
Perfect
seriously.
timing.
I'm like so happy
right.
that you guys are my friends. And
Same.
I really think this episode is going to help a lot of people who have church hurt. These are recovering preacher's kids, if we could say.
Yes, we
Right?
are.
Yeah.
But why is that? Like, that has such a stigma to it. Why? Like, what does that mean? Like, recovering preacher's kids. Like, Nikki, we'll start with you.
Well, I think for me, and I know some other people who've lived these similar lifestyles. Really, there's like a culture, especially like 80s, 90s kids in the church, while our parents' generation they were trying to figure things out too.
Yep.
Like how far do we go? How long is this leash? What are they allowed to do and not allowed to do? And a lot of times it was like these polarizing opposites. So for me, it was like, no radio stations, and most TV was banned, and I couldn't listen to anything but Christian music. I couldn't go to non-Christian people's houses, or most people's houses for that matter, because they were all like lukewarm Christians in their eyes. So it's a lot of like judgment as to what other people are compared to
Isn't that
yourself.
crazy?
And like, in my story, there wasn't really any mindfulness or attention paid to like your own issues either. It was just like, stay away from the sinners.
Right.
And which is the opposite of like,
It's so crazy.
It's brilliant. It's a brilliant
I know,
plan.
it's a brilliant plan. I remember, so I was like 10 years old, and this is like in the 80s. I loved Mr. T, especially after Rocky 3.
Dude, me too.
Yeah.
that eats my cereal.
And he came out, and we weren't allowed to watch R-rated movies. And he came out with an R-rated movie called DC Cab. And I still haven't watched it to this day because it was R-rated. And I was having a sleepover at my friend's house, and I called my mom. I go, Mom, they're watching DC Cab. It's Mr. T, but it's R-rated. She goes, nope, I'm coming to pick you up. And I went home.
Oh no, dude.
So I wasn't allowed to watch R-rated movies either. But it's, you're like, that worked out well.
It doesn't sound too far-fetched at all, though. At all, dude. That's in the realm of possibilities there for sure.
We weren't allowed to watch kissing on commercials either.
Really?
We had to block our eyes while there was anything like that came off as intimate with someone.
Wow, yeah.
So yeah.
It's crazy that you ended up having kids after all that.
Yeah, exactly. My first, after I held hands, like 4 weeks later, I'm pregnant. It's amazing that happened.
Dude, I'm not going to I was about to go down that path because I really believed like if it got even close to a girl, she was
Right.
going to get pregnant. I didn't understand the whole thing, how it worked in my teens.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah,
knew
same.
if my pants came off next to a girl, she was going to get pregnant.
Yeah.
Didn't matter what we did.
You know?
That was my level of awareness about the whole thing. I had
Right.
seen a health book once of just naked people in a line. Can I say that? Is that too?
Oh, for sure.
Okay, good. And it just, all that changed was like the hair got bigger with every decade.
And you're like, gross.
Right.
I
And
don't
my-
even want to see him naked.
yeah, and my brother was like, that's me, like the 30-year-old,
Oh, you're like,
like full-blown
that's where I'm at.
hairy areas. That's all I knew, is that your hair got puffier through the years. Everything else was just out there. Yeah.
So good.
Thank God that generation has moved on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, but like from a serious note, let's start with you, Nikki, because I mean, your parents, I'm getting to know you as a friend too. So if I screw this up, just say, no, it was actually this way. But you grew up in the church. I want to say you grew up as the featured singer in like tent revivals and stuff, right? And
Right.
then you launched your Christian music career, and then you had a setback, whatever that is. Let's talk about that and how the Christians treated you, because, hey, the way this ends, it ends on an uptick. And I think a lot of people who have experienced church hurt can learn a lot from you and Ryan on how to deal with that and how to recover, because ultimately, don't look at God's character and nature through bad Christians, right?
Exactly.
So, like, what happened?
Because then we'll always be disappointed. So growing up in church life, I started singing at, different churches through Southern California. I was just watching the Jesus Revolution movie and saw Chuck Smith, and he booked me for my very first gigs when I was like 12, 13 years old. Yeah. And so they were a big deal in like Riverside. I grew up in Riverside. So Greg Laurie and Harvest.
909?
Yes.
Or was it 951 back then?
It was the 909 back
Let's
then.
go.
951 is for, the later people who aren't real 909ers.
It's true.
But yeah, the Harvest people and all of that, that's where I got my start singing. And I loved it. Like, I really had a heart for God, for ministry. It was important to me. I was a part of the purity culture, speakers, abstinence conferences, read all the books.
I don't think that was bad, right? Like, you should save yourself for marriage. Like, I can honestly say, like, for real, my wife and I, we were not perfect before we got married. Neither of us were virgins when we got married. Sorry, son, if you're listening to that, but we weren't. But we did wait to have sex until we married. And I can honestly say there has been a supernatural blessing on our sex life because I believe we waited. So, like, the purity culture, like, they did screw it up because they put so much legalism in it, but it's not
Right.
bad to save yourself for marriage. Like, that's the way God designed it, right?
No, and of course, I mean, as a parent, like, of course, I want my
For
kids
sure.
to be like an untouched flower on their wedding days. Of course, that's like the most excellent way of doing
Yes.
things. I think there was like a negative feeling once, you've engaged in premarital sex and there's like this, I don't have this special thing anymore.
Yes.
So it's easy to throw, like, there's these all or nothing polarizing ideas, and it's easy to just go all in the other way. Like, I'm either
Yep.
on this path and I'm good in the eyes of the Lord and I'm pure, or I'm not. And so, like, my brain, because there was no in between, was like, oh, here we go. I'm on this path now. I'm this person who's failed. And so, yeah, I did the abstinence conferences and magazines on purity and different things like that.
True Love Waits. You
True
did?
Love Waits.
Let's
I had a
go.
key around my neck that I had bestowed upon me at a conference, and I chewed it. It was like this little.
As you're looking at Ryan across the room, you're like, hey,
I gifted it to both of my
do you want
husbands.
my key? You're so real. I love it.
I gifted it to my first husband as a recycled virgin type
Right.
offering, because that's what they called us too.
Recycled?
Back then, recycled virgin, which still has like a weird.
It does have a weird, but they
thing.
meant well.
They meant well, yeah. So
I mean, it seems like the word virgin doesn't work anymore.
Dude, it's true.
It just
You're
kind
like,
of seems that recycled.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
But it's crazy how, like, but back then, it's crazy how, like, the sin in Christians' mind, the sin overrode redemption.
yes,
The sin was bigger than, like,
Yeah.
they didn't preach redemption. They preached sin, brother.
sin. That's what it felt like. And so on that journey, trying to live up to these standards and do this, I am touring around the world, and I have 4 top 5 songs, the number 1 song on the radio. Like, it's all going. And when I met my first husband, he was in a Christian band as well. And it was something where it's like easy. I'm like, I have, never held hands with a man. And like everything felt like, when I did those interviews and I said, I shall not give away a single kiss until my wedding day. Like, I really did sincerely have
Right.
these feelings to do that. But coming from someone who had a traumatic upbringing, who had a father who was not present but there, just
Right.
like a moving body.
Yep.
The first time someone held my hand and was around, I couldn't handle what that came with. I'm like, I can never be alone again. This feels too good. Now, this person was a really bad person, did a lot of really bad things, but I couldn't leave that feeling of being, alone, go back to being alone again.
Do you think if your dad would have been more affectionate with you and showed you what that felt like in a pure father-daughter way, do you think that would have changed the way you felt when you finally got alone with a man in like a sexual way, or no?
I do, actually. I think that there's something to be said for having people that notice you and pay attention to you. I mean, it's so simple, but when you have someone in your life that matters so much and you matter so much to them, like, you live at a different standard than knowing nothing in you that you do in your life is going to ultimately matter, because no one sees the good or the bad. Like when you're checked out, when your
Yeah.
parents are disassociated and they're not caring. I think that level of care, maybe I wouldn't have,
Right.
but I think it gives young women a chance to know they have like this father's love, and you're not such a dry garden. I saw myself as like this empty soil, this dry soil, and one drop, and I'm like, I'm yours, take me, and I'm not seeing anything else. I'm not seeing their character. I'm not seeing their lying or whatever it
Wow.
is.
So that guy, your ex, right, was doing that. Like, what? Not a great guy?
Oh, I mean, during our marriage and after, arrested multiple times, and
And this was a Christian producer?
a Christian guitarist in a Christian band.
Wow.
Ended up like indecent exposure arrests and public masturbation arrests and peeping Tom on the colleges here in Nashville. Like,
you kidding
oh
me?
yeah, I ended up meeting like someone who I just wasn't prepared as a young
And you would-
17-year-old to
It's like,
handle.
guys, like, I mean, it's like the guy's like Quagmire or something.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
And I want to
Chill,
pivot.
bro.
I want to pivot there. So this is, or put a pin right there. So this is your husband at the time.
Yes.
And you're about to get out of this relationship. Right?
Okay, so I already am starting to see stuff, and I'm like, I'm not in love with you. And
Why'd
then-
you get booted from the Christian church? Like, why did all that go away?
So I find out I'm pregnant, right?
Before you're married with this guy.
Yes,
Okay.
with this guy, and I just wanted to make it right. Like I felt so guilty. I'm like, look what I did. And I was on a tour at the time, like a Winter Jam type tour. And I had to tell all of them, I'm like, hey, I'm pregnant. This is what's happening. They asked me to stay on the tour. They were actually really kind. And they're for him back in the Basics of Life, guys. They were who I was touring with at the time.
Oh, wow.
And they said, you can.
To the Basics of Life.
Yes, remember that song?
Yeah, Eli, you remember that? Wow.
So they-
I didn't know that was you. I'm fanning out a little bit more now. My God.
They're so great. So they offered me to stay. And personally, being on stage for 20, 30,000 people a night, being pregnant, like I left early. I'm like, I can't do it. I sign girls' autographs all night, and I'm just not going to stay on the road and take some time off. So I get back to Nashville, and I tell my management and the whole thing. And my ex and I were like, let's just get married to make it right. You know, even though we weren't thriving in a relationship, it was like immediately, let's do this. And so I had like
real old school mentality.
Oh, yeah.
Like, okay, now I'm going to make myself pure and right. And all
yes,
that by
like
marrying.
7 days later after I found out I'm pregnant, like.
And then, okay, so let me pin there. And now I want to go to Ryan and get your backstory. And then we're going to bring them all together at the end, right?
okay, cool.
Okay.
So, Ryan, you haven't come into the picture yet, obviously.
Right.
At this point, tell me about your background and what you're doing. So, like, we have two parallels. We have my future wife, Nikki, in the 90s is off doing this. Where's Ryan Edgar at that time?
So at that time, I am off partying super hard is what I'm doing.
And you're a pastor's kid too.
Yes. Yeah. And so I'm in my teenage years at that time too.
Let me ask you both.
yeah.
Do you think pastors' kids go off the deep end because there's so much legalism around them? Like, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. And then you finally get out and you're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Or is it the pastors are so busy, they don't spend enough time that you're pointing at me? So that's it?
Yeah, I think what I've seen a lot of, and I'm not blanket statement
Sure.
on everyone here, but what I've seen is that there's such a need to heal the world and to help the church and to feed into your church community that there is a lot missing in your family life that's getting overlooked, and which should be numero uno for where they're at and what their ministry is. But
Right. No, for sure. I mean, I think in every scenario it's different because all the parents are different. All like churches are different. Leadership is different. Everything is.
Yeah.
And how they raise you. And specifically, I think in the 80s and 90s, a lot of us have similar stories because of what was happening. I think Christian music like became a thing then. But we had hymns before, but then it became a business, right?
Yeah.
Christian films, Christian like that started to really build and give people an opportunity to not look at things that were secular, right? Yeah. So you can listen to Christian music now. You can separate now. So that's really when that weird sort of stuff in my like I understand how my parents felt that way because they were like, oh, check this out. This is all safe now.
Yeah.
And this is all bad. So for me, I felt like they didn't know it, but at the end of the day, it wasn't a great idea. It was sort of like an easy way to be like, they can watch this, not this. They can listen to this, not this, you know? And meanwhile, some of the Christian people we're listening to are like crazier than...
Dude, totally.
You know what I mean? Like,
so you're at this time. Are you a teenager in the 90s? And you're party. Like when you say partying, like what are you doing?
I'm doing a ton of drugs. So I did mostly party drugs and stuff like that. I sold a lot of marijuana when I was in high school.
Was marijuana the gateway to the other stuff?
I don't know if it was a gateway necessarily. I was ready. Like for some reason, there was something in me that by the time I was 12, 13 years old, I was ready. Like the first person that offered me a joint, it wasn't like, oh, I don't know. It was like, where have you been, bro? It's time to spark this baby up, you know? Yeah. Like, and I never really asked a lot of questions as far as like, why were you like that, Ryan? You know, about myself until in the last, I'd say 10 years going,
What's
hey,
the
that was
answer?
really odd, man.
What was
That's a
your
good, well, that's still a good question. Why was I so ready to do that? But I know that there was something missing. There was something missing to where I wasn't being connected to in a certain way, I think, where I was searching for something inside.
So let me ask you a tough question.
Yeah.
Thinking back then, as a Christian back then, why wasn't your relationship with Christ enough? Like that's what they would say, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
we're about relationship, not religion.
Yeah, right.
So
Yes.
why isn't your relationship in the right place? Like I'm being, 1990s
Yeah.
Pentecostal Pastor Pete here.
There's still some of those.
Oh yeah.
Well, I think that I feel like anytime I've ever come to God in my life, honestly, that God's always been good to me and he's always come to meet me, been faithful. Why was that not enough? It's not that God isn't enough. It isn't that it isn't like your relationship with him isn't powerful enough to just do extraordinary things.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That if you don't have a relationship, you may not see, so that relationship is powerful. However, the way that he set things up is we need each other, man.
Yeah.
We need people. You need somebody to be able to look at you and call things out as a young person in your life and say, hey, I see this gift in you, man. And people who have maybe they're
So
a little
when you
further
say
down.
call out, you're not saying call out and point out the bad stuff. You're saying call out the gifts and the good stuff that God put in you.
Yeah, that stuff too. You need to be able to people
Being
to look up to.
seen.
Being
Yeah.
seen. Yeah, being
Seen.
and if, there's places that when it comes to getting to know somebody or somebody who's having trouble, right? Like if there's a kid who's using drugs, there's a way, they have to be pursued. You know what I'm saying? They really have to be pursued, man. And if they're not fully pursued, then there's a good chance that, they're going to stay in the same place, especially teenagers.
And
especially
and I
living with
hate
your
to
parents.
interject. It comes down to who sees you. It's the same as a teenager who hasn't been seen, and someone comes along who sees something in them, and they feel like they're being noticed, and so they can follow that way. It's the same in a marriage. If you're not tending to each other, and someone comes along and sees something that you did that no one else sees and notices about you, you can go along that way.
There's the question for you guys listening. Who do you see? Who are you seeing right now? Are you seeing your spouse? Are you seeing your kids? Or are you seeing your coworker that you're not married to more than you're seeing your spouse? Ouch.
Whoa.
Yeah.
All right, Ryan, go ahead.
My goodness. Where was I? Where were we talking? Okay.
You were going so you're party boy.
Yeah.
Parallel here, your future wife is, she's about to marry a guy she probably shouldn't marry for the sake of Christianity.
Right.
And you're just throwing Christianity out the road and you're like, Budweiser time.
Right. It's Miller High Lifetime.
So what happened? What happened to your career? Because you're a musician at the time, right?
Right. Well, I actually didn't have much of the only career that I had at that time was probably selling drugs and stuff.
Really?
But I could sing and stuff, but we're still talking about teenage years, man. We're
Are
still
you going
early.
to church and slinging drugs?
I mean, my parents would make me go to church still.
Mm-hmm.
So to hold up appearances. So here's the thing is that they wouldn't necessarily know all I was doing because I wasn't all up in their face disrespectful.
Sure. Yeah.
I wasn't crazy enough to yell at my mom or dad. I'm going to get equalized real quick. That way. And my parents loved me. They were really, and doing their best to try to figure those things out with me.
So did you turn it all around before you became a worship leader? I mean, because am I right in saying you led worship at Gateway Church?
Oh yeah,
Robert Morris's church. That's big.
So I was one of the worship leaders there. So the head worship leader there was Thomas Miller when I was there. He's an elder there now, but I came over with him and helped start that whole thing. I was there when it was a small
was all that
church
already
when I
behind
started.
you?
Yeah, that was behind me then. So that was the early 2000s. So I had a close to death experience, and then after that, I took some hallucinogens after being on a bit of a drug bender, and my heart was giving out, and I ended up going to the hospital, and they had to work on me to not, to keep me from dying for a couple of hours. And so it was really complicated what happened.
Were you feeling it give out, or did you just black out?
No, I felt it. I knew it was happening, and it was, of course, exacerbated by the fact that I was on, hallucinogenics. something that was, what's the other word? Say hallucinogens or like whatever.
Wow, what was it? Tab, shrooms, acid?
It
What
was,
it?
oh no, this was actually a form of acid and LSD. It was like LSD and acid together. It was like I've never seen it since, really. So
You never saw the purple unicorn again?
yeah, never saw a purple unicorn again.
The spaceships.
That one.
So how do you come back? So you have this near-death experience. They bring you
Yes.
back, and then it's like, all right, I'm at rock bottom. Jesus, I'm never doing that again. Like, what happened?
In that moment, I felt this weight in my chest, and I felt myself I felt my body shutting down. And so it was a really, it's something that's almost impossible to explain,
Right.
but I felt my body shutting. I knew it was, and I asked God to help me, and God helped me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I actually asked in that moment. And so when I came out of it, it was the next day. It was like midday through the next day when I was really coming to. And because they had put so much stuff in my system to try to help me, and after that, I realized that I needed a change in my life, and I'm just thankful that anytime I think about that, I'm thankful for that moment that I was able to think and know and go, hey, you have to change something or you're going to die or you're going to go to jail. It's one of those two are going to happen, or you got to change something. So I'm thankful for that moment, But after that, I went to Teen Challenge.
Love it.
Yep, was in there for a year.
You know who founded Teen Challenge? I learned this in the Assemblies of God teaching. Wilkerson.
David frickin' Wilkerson, man.
Wilkerson founded Teen Challenge.
He did.
I know that through my AG teaching.
You do?
Yeah.
I like that, bro.
I'm really proud of myself.
Nikki Cruz is too. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Crossing the Switchblade was a great movie.
So you go to Teen Challenge, you turn it around. At this time, okay, so Nikki, back to you. How do you turn your situation around? Because now you're pregnant, you're young, you're at the top of the Christian church, and you're about to marry a guy that you probably shouldn't marry, but you didn't know that at the time.
Yeah. Pretty wild. Isn't that crazy?
It
Our
is
parallel
crazy.
lives, though.
It is.
I'm a great narrator, aren't I? We're doing this together. You guys see the movie?
No, it's
You
really
are the new
cool.
Chat GPT. Just input information. Sorry, I can't stop thinking about it.
I love it, dude. You're the best.
No. So yeah, I jumped into that marriage thinking that we're going to turn it around and I would have an opportunity to still keep my career ministry going and kind of make my wrongs right. And I went on an apology tour at different radio stations and trying
What does that sound like? Is it like the Jimmy Swaggart, I have sinned against you? Like, what are you saying?
At that
What does an
point,
apology tour look like? Because it sucks.
It sucked. It was hard. I think, I was realizing through this tour that this is not what I want anymore. I felt so bad about myself.
This is not what I want in terms of what?
I can't continue in this field with a Christian career.
Because why?
I felt low about myself. I was like, the God of the universe has forgiven me through the gospel message of undeserved grace, right? Yep. I am new and I can do, all things through Christ, all the things, but I can't get forgiveness from other humans right now. And they were mad at me. And I remember being pregnant and one of the biggest Christian leaders in the teen world called me and was like, how dare you? You embarrassed my platform. I can't believe I trusted you to be on my stage. And now I have to go and do blah, blah, blah. And I'm vomiting. I had sickness every day of my pregnancy. I just lost my whole career.
How old were you again?
I just turned 18 now at this point.
Just saying.
I feel like I need to ask
That's
this.
young, dude.
Did you ever think about calling it quits, suicide, anything like that? Or did that never enter your mind?
That wasn't till later. Not
really?
at that point.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go back before we get there. So we'll go to that point. So God has forgiven you, but the Christians haven't.
Right. Christians haven't.
Did you forgive yourself?
No, I didn't forgive myself for probably a decade or more after that. I carried this weight of shame that just was in me. I felt like this is my fault. I knew better and I should have done better. And I didn't see myself as a victim of someone either until later on I started getting therapy. And my counselor's like, let's unpack your family situation and let's unpack this guy who found you because he saw your picture in a store and let's unpack all these things that happened to you. And then I started having grace for myself that I didn't have.
What would you say
long.
to people who are listening or watching right now that have been battling that and still haven't forgiven themselves?
Ooh, I just feel like the greatest the greatest feeling in the world, the greatest step we can take is to have that kind of unending grace that God has for us with our own hearts and lives and mind and everything. Like that is the transformative thing where it's like, no, there's, we can say cliche things. God forgives, blah, blah, blah. And we're carrying this weight inside of us about our messy past or no, but I did this and that looks really bad. And we start labeling things differently than other people's crap and whatever it looks like. But for me, it was like the real transformation happened when I really accepted that grace for myself in the way that God sees me and sees my life and my past. And it's messier than what I got canceled for. Right. I got canceled for like the easy stuff. Jeez. And so I thought if people really knew me and the things that I had done, imagine what the church would think of me, Which makes you hide, makes you feel isolated, all that. Yeah. Well, I'm like, I got kicked out of churches canceling their dates, returning their CDs, whatever it was, for choosing to have life and, give my daughter life and move forward and try to make it right and do all these things. And there was like an endless canceling, like they wouldn't come back from that. And so I unraveled in the same way I was taught the black and whites and the opposites is how I saw my life. When the sins came and took hold, then it's like, well, that didn't work. The apologies didn't work. I'm cancelable. I deserve nothing. So the next time I got pregnant, I didn't choose life for that child. Wow. Because, and I had so much conviction the first time to do that, but I was so young and my brain is now all screwed up and I'm making decisions that made me feel even more terrible about who I was because now I'm like, now look what I did. I nearly bled to death in Kentucky from an abortion. Are you kidding me? No. And I had to get a blood transfusion and that was only a couple years after that. By the time I'm 21 years old, I'm in a hospital in the middle of nowhere bleeding to death. And so I especially went on. Who was there for you? Who helped you? I was alone. I was on a tour and I had to make money. So I went on this tour a day after getting a procedure in the middle of Florida somewhere. And I went on the road with a Christian guy who brought me out to sing his background vocals because he was trying to help me after I couldn't get work. And then this happens. And then that's when I really spiraled into dark places where I'm like. After the abortion? Yeah. Do you think because of that abortion mentally, it took you down that path? Yeah. Yeah. I hated myself. I hated myself for where my life was. And I felt like I couldn't keep up or ever be what I once was, this poster child of virginity. And then I felt like the entirely opposite direction, like just this loser kid who, there's nothing for me anymore. Like literally, that's when I felt like I probably shouldn't be alive. We had, last year we had a big Christian comedian on here. His name is John Christ. And he talked about how he messed up and how there was a time like nobody reached out to him and just said, dude, I love you. I'm here for you. And then that one person, did you have anybody that just said, I'm here for you? I don't know exactly how you're feeling, but I'm here if you want to talk. Like, did anyone help you? Nobody helped me besides, someone gave me a check that was at the record label, John Elefante. He handed me a check to help me on my way. And then after that, it was pretty it was alone. Nobody checked in on me psychologically. How are you? What's happening? Like, it was just, I was this marketable teen who was touring, making them money. I had people employed by me, band members, management, booking agency, record label, like all of the things. And it was like crickets, nothing. I think I got a pack of like a diaper set from William Morris Agency with like a stork. God. And then that's about it. Like it was just alone, just silence and alone. And I knew like I wasn't marketable anymore. I had nothing to offer. And then my value and identity was wrapped up in what I was doing. And so being that I couldn't sing and I couldn't tour, I felt like I was absolutely nothing. And my family, from a music culture, it was like, you're something because you're talented. I got attention in my childhood by being able to sing. It made me be seen in a way that I wasn't seen in my family. So not being seen anymore made me feel even more alone, desolate.
So for your husband, Ryan, at that time, his body shutting down, he cried out to God, and that was his turning point. For you, what's the turning point here? Because it's definitely, your mind feels like it's shutting down, like his body was shutting down.
I would say there was some turning points after my first near-death experience. There was some like, okay, let's start on a path. But my real spiritual like awakening God moments didn't happen until I had signed a big record deal in LA with Warner Brothers. We were doing all of the shows and on Ellen and singing in Times Square. How many years later is this? That was when I was like 27.
Okay.
27, 28 years old. So it took all that time of like going out, going to LA, living a life that I shouldn't have been living. At this point, I had already been married twice. I was divorced twice by the time I was 25 years old.
So by this time, are you pretty much like, well, I'm never doing anything Christian again?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Like that's out the window. Like that door is slammed shut for me. And I never thought about it. I never listened to Christian radio again at that point. I was full atheist.
Never went to Chick-fil-A.
Oh. I didn't have to worry about Sundays because I didn't go anyway.
Deep moment, and I made a joke. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Good.
Yeah, no. So yeah, I felt like those doors were shut. You couldn't convince me God was real.
So you said you're for real.
I'm done.
Full on
like
atheist
there's
mode.
nothing out there for me.
This is a fascinating question that I
Right.
genuinely have for you. How do you see and experience the power of God at such a young age? Because you saw real stuff.
I did. I felt real stuff.
Right. And then now your experiences that you're currently walking through, you're forgetting all those things that you've already saw, and you're just like, okay, well, God's not real. How does that happen?
You start connecting people to God. They abandoned me. They don't care about me. They think, I have this scarlet letter on me. I'm an outcast. I'm this and that. So you start wrongly connecting how people treat you to how you think God sees you.
Wow.
And would treat you. Right. So I based it off of my dad. I based it off my mom. I based it off the pastors who canceled. I was like, I do not want to be in the club my parents are in. I do not want to say I'm a Christian if those people are Christian. Like I hated the whole thing. I hated the terminology. I hated the Christianese. I hated when I said I don't believe in God and convinced me otherwise. And they would be like, well, in the beginning was the word. And I'm like, don't debate me with the Bible that I don't believe in right now.
Right.
But I think there was no outward display from all that knowledge and from all the religion. There was nothing coming out on the outside that would validate that love, that never-ending deep well of love that God has. I didn't see that in real life,
Dude,
in my life.
Isn't it crazy how she's saying love, like the greatest is love, and you weren't seeing that in anybody that professed to be a real Christian?
No, I had a song that was number 3 on Christian radio about loving one another.
And if you like a part of her story that always just blows my mind is how many people had to see her and know that she needed help and support. How many times did people see that there was a teenager alone on the road, a teenage girl on the road alone.
No parents.
Nobody's looking. Oh, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's a lot of conversation. There's a lot of questions that needs to happen. There's dialogue that needs to go on with somebody in that scenario. I mean, no matter where you are, if you stop talking to your teenager and you let them just roll off and like do whatever they want, there's a chance they're going to get into some stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Imagine this situation. Imagine all of a sudden you got finances and everybody thinks you're just great. And, and you're carrying that and no one's looking out for you.
They're not asking questions. They're sending nutritionists and trainers on the road because I was gaining weight. This is a Christian company. And then there's that dynamic where I'm like, oh, I never even thought of myself as someone who was bigger, but I turned that leaf from the 14-year-old they signed to a 17-year-old and she's gaining weight. Let's get someone to tell her to stop eating fast food and do all this stuff. I mean, this is like the dynamics of being in Christian music and being somebody that has to sell product. It's still marketing. It's still all these things, especially back then. We're not in the age of like,
Right.
No.
now
We have
everything
made
is
some
self-love. We've
adjustments.
made adjustments to those things, but then
It's better.
it was like just intense pressure.
So going to the Ellen and signing your record deal with Warner Brothers, like what turned it around? Because this is your turning point.
Yes, I have like literal moments, and I'm living up in the Hollywood Hills. My boyfriend at the time is like this billionaire heir to this.
What?
Yes. And we're driving the Maybachs and the Bentleys around town, and I'm doing the thing and I'm living my life. And
We're
and
pals, by the way. Me and him.
Really?
he's wonderful. Yeah. My ex is great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Were you miserable at the time, or were you miserable at the time, or were you having these temporary little victories and pockets of happiness so you just went through?
It was both. I'm having high highs and low lows. So I'm on TV. I'm doing these things. The world is my oyster, whatever. Like everything is coming up. And then I'm fighting for my son with my ex for custody. And because of my music career, they deemed it imbalanced. And so he got the primary custody of my son. And so I paid child support to my ex for 11 years and flew to my son.
And he took it.
And he took it. That was the hardest time in my life. I talk about all the other things, but none of that compares to when you're dealing stuff with your kids. You know, that was the real pain. That was the real struggle.
What do you do? Because I do have, and I'm primarily thinking of one person, good Christian woman, thought she married a good Christian man. And because she's the sole breadwinner and they're going through divorce, she's got to pay him. Mm-hmm. And
I know.
what? Because I'm trying to be like, hey, like I'm trying to say what I believe, but I don't know what it's like to be here. It's like, trust in God. God's going to come through for you. And she's like, okay, well, where is he?
Right.
I'm paying the money. I'm doing the thing. Like, cool, bro. Where's he at?
Yeah, that's hard because I thought the same thing. And I'm like, I'm handing a check over to this guy who was an alcoholic at the time. And I should have won. Like every amount of injustice that could happen happened based on this girl who was out with Carrie Underwood. She just cares about being a star. No, I didn't go to college. The only thing I knew how to do was to do music, and I was judged wrongfully by a conservative judge who was like, no, you don't get to have primary. I would think that all the time. I could have lived for years in heartache and resentment if I would have really looked at what was happening at that time. But there was a lot of moments within the fact that I couldn't change anything at that time. God's provision was there. He brought like crazy miracles that happened for me. Like one lady at the airport handed me vouchers that I could fly for free every month to see my son. And I wept like I shouldn't have been given that. And I'm like, I get to see him every month. God sees me. This situation.
So are you an atheist at this time or no?
That was when I was starting to.
Okay, that's when you're coming
So
back.
so I'm in LA. I'm driving the Bentleys. I'm living the life. I'm sitting next to Leo DiCaprio at the clubs. Like I'm in the stuff. And I get back to the studio one night and I'm laying in the bed in the studio by myself, and I decide to turn on some old Christian music from the 90s.
Why?
It just came up. I'm like, I want to hear this song. And it's your kindness that leads to repentance.
Your kindness.
Not that one.
What does it go? You sing it.
It's your kindness that leads us to repentance, oh Lord. Knowing that you love us.
You are good.
That one?
Yeah, it's a different one.
Oh, okay.
I was thinking about
It
which
was
one
that
he was on.
one,
You are
and
good
it was
is the one
another
he came
one. Is every day I look to you to be the strength of my life. You're the one I hold on to be the strength of my life.
Sing
and
it.
I start.
Come on, we want to hear you sing it.
Every day I look to you to be the strength of my life.
I remember. I haven't heard that forever. I love that song.
Hope I hold hold on to be the strength
I wish I could harmonize.
of my life. Be the strength of my life. Be the strength of my life.
I don't know this song.
Be the
Stop looking at me.
strength of my life. Be the strength of my life today.
Oh, it's such a good song.
Isn't it so good?
Okay, so you're listening to that, and then what?
I weep. I start weeping. It was the original language that God spoke to my
I'm having
heart.
this
Was
vision
music.
of you on your back. I love that song. I haven't heard it in 20 years.
Isn't that
And I'm going
great?
to download it. Was it the Heritage Singers? No.
It's Leslie Phillips originally recorded it. And
Remember them? Champion of Love?
Yeah, dude.
what were they? What did you say?
The Heritage
Heritage
Singers?
Yes,
Singers.
it's
Tim
Tim
Davis.
Davis's group. He
That's
likes.
so awesome.
Yeah.
They came to our church once.
Oh, that's
All right.
awesome.
So, okay. So,
So
you
I'm
have this.
weeping. I hear this song and I start crying, and I'm drawn back to my first moments of loving God and feeling God, and it was this moment that I'm like, I want to believe. I feel you. I felt him with me, and I'm like, I need to change my life. I need to leave this house. This isn't what's helping me in my life. I need to reestablish whatever it is to get my family back together. My daughter was with me, but my son was in Florida. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just go leave this high life, and I found this tiny little apartment
So did you
down
break
the
up with
street.
your boyfriend?
I did.
And you all are still friends?
Yeah, he's awesome.
That's really cool.
He came to some shows, and Ryan is not a weird, like, Ryan has actually so much inner confidence that he doesn't care. He's like bros out with them. I look out and I'm singing, and they met each other, and they're like arm in arm swaying together. And I was like, of course my husband is like best friends with this guy.
I
now.
love
It's
you,
awesome.
Ryan.
I freaking
Everyone
love
loves you.
I love that guy. He's great, and I love you.
I love you, bro. Even though I don't have a Maybach yet.
Not
or
yet.
a Bentley
Yet. That's
I'm working,
right.
I'm working my way up. All right, so you have this redemptive experience, and then we're going to bring Brian back
Yeah.
in, and then the two become one, and now
Yes.
here you guys are.
Cool.
All right, so now your life turns around. You decide to get your family back, and then God starts blessing you. Airport vouchers. You're on Ellen. You're writing music. What's going down?
Yeah, I get a call from my friend Tim Davis to go sing on Glee, and I had just lost my record deal at that point. So it's like, okay, I don't want to tour anymore. I'm gonna quit. I was offered an international tour as a background singer for a huge pop singer, and I said no. I'm going to do whatever it takes to be stationary, get my family back together. So instead of taking this amazing international pop tour job, I take a little job in a hotel
Can I ask
lobby.
who it was? Pop, just out of curiosity. You don't have to tell me. Okay, no, never mind. All right.
I will
Moving on.
after.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to know. All right, go ahead.
There's bad blood there with some people.
Oh,
who, you know.
I get to know after. Okay, go ahead.
So I end up taking this job in a hotel lobby. And what happened was suddenly, by being obedient to what I felt God was calling, all of a sudden, Prince and Stevie Wonder and Justin Bieber and the Jonas Brothers are coming to sing with me on my stage that I'm hosting a show at every week.
I
So it's
saw
like-
when Prince got up and grabbed the guitar.
Yes.
I've seen that on your
like huge
soch.
moments that people don't get to experience every day. You know, it was like life changing. So it's like, don't worry, you didn't give up anything. I actually got more by doing that.
Can God use Prince and these other people to inspire his children?
Yes.
Oh, I thought he only used Christians.
Right.
He used pigs.
Well, and even the facts that he did utilize them, didn't he? He did
All right,
utilize
go
the pigs. So the thing is that, when she's saying, I felt like God wanted me to start this show. A lot of where we came from, that would be a crazy idea. God said for you to start this show in Hollywood.
Right.
Right.
That's not a Christian show. It's like, what's funny is that literally some people will have a hard time even wrapping their minds around that. Now, 10 years ago, even more people. You know what I mean? 20 years ago?
Yeah.
More people. They're like, it's secular. You see what I'm saying?
Can you
But it was
believe-
literally what she was supposed to be doing at that
Can
time.
you believe how the Pharisees must have felt when they saw Jesus eating with sinners and women
Right.
back then? Like, for real.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, talking to Samaritans.
Right.
And, so, yeah, I get it. All right, so how does it come together? How do you guys come together?
Okay. Yeah. So during that time when I was doing Glee, I had a friend there on the set handing me a computer of Ryan singing. And he said, I have this guy who looks like Jared Leto.
He does.
And you need to
Don't
meet
look at
him.
it. Okay.
And I heard
don't-
him singing
By the
with
way, I
his
don't get
chest
it,
hair. He had like a lowered shirt with
Wait,
chest
you're
hair.
into the chest hair at
But
the time?
it was, and I want to be very clear. This was not a V-neck. All right, this was not a V-neck that
Was
I
it
was
a
wearing.
tired
Everybody
t-shirt that
watching,
just-
It was a silky button up,
it was sick.
and he had his long hair like dyed
Dude, if you
black.
Google Ryan Edgar and you look at some of his pics, he looks like an angel. And
Oh,
so
whatever,
He's like looking up at the camera and this pink light shining on him. I've seen some of your outfits, bro.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that
I
one. That's
freaking
a
love
That
that.
is
All right,
funny.
so Jared Leto looking like walks in, chest hair,
I
not a V-neck.
Yeah, I hear him singing. And of course, looks, voice, I was sold. We started talking for like a whole year via text and stuff. And he
Yeah.
wouldn't ask me out because he
And
knew
you
I was
reverted
like,
back to your 17 years old. Don't hold my hand or else my flower. So you guys come together.
Yeah.
So you're chasing him and he's not feeling it?
well, we weren't, she got me first. He
No, for
reached
sure.
out first.
Once I started to reach out to her on like through Vine first. It was Vine.
Vine?
So we followed each other first, and then Instagram. This was like Vine and Vine. It was just popping at the
And then,
time.
real quick, just to catch the listeners up. So,
Which is over
You had
now.
this experience where your body shut down. You come back to God, and then now are you already leading worship like you're a good Christian boy, not doing anything? Or
Oh heck no, bro. Okay, so well, yeah, like
There's more.
oh.
Yeah.
I know that the perfect like story is that Ryan never had any trouble, or Ryan all of a sudden his
Right.
addictive personality was gone. But that is
you
not
asked
my
God
story.
to help, and God helped you.
Yeah, he did help me.
And
you
then
know?
what?
Yeah, and he's like, well, I need you to like have this, like, there's a part of how he put me together where it's actually a good thing.
Yeah.
Like the way that I can catch on to something and do it over and over again and obsess over it. That's for a purpose. And used in the right way, it's kind of brilliant. You know what I mean? Like, and I have the freedom to say it's kind of brilliant because it's really bad on the other side, too.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Yes.
so it's good and bad. So, there's struggles that I had. There's things that I've gone through after, I was in Teen Challenge for a year. And that person that went into Teen Challenge and the person that came out, that's two totally different people.
So awesome.
Like, I'm telling you, man, like the way my mind was working and the place I was heading and how addicted I was to so many things. And I didn't even know it, how addicted I was until I got in there. Okay, so there's healing and all this stuff that happened to me over that year. When I graduated there, I ended up going to Christ for the Nations in Dallas, Texas. And then, so I went there for 2 years. And that's when I got connected with Gateway and everything. And I went to Dallas Baptist. I graduated from there, ended up staying in Texas. And that's where I started my Christian music journey. Also, like trying to figure out how to negotiate the fact that I was writing pop songs and love songs. And this culture I'm in is really a strong worship culture, a strong, and so figuring out I was the only one that wasn't just about that. I had other gifts. I was a different kind of person,
Yeah.
So that began there started to be some tension there, and like I don't fit in completely here yet, and so there's some things that I had to experience and go through as far as creative and as far as just being a human being and and growing in church. So
This is so awesome because talking to both of you, the story is different, but it's so freaking similar, which is why probably when you guys come together, you guys probably have had a ton of me too moments, right?
The first night we met,
yeah, dude.
I looked at him and I looked at the stars, and we might have been high, but I said, "I get you." And
We might have been.
and we sang Father Abraham and like all of our kids' songs, and I was like, "This is my person. It's like I've known him my whole life. This is going to be smooth sailing from here, like
Right.
redemption, happy ending story, restoration, the whole thing." But it was really freaking hard after that. But he was is my person still.
I could totally tell.
We got married, you know what I mean? Baby and babies.
we going on
we
10.
gotta do some work.
We
Right?
going on 10 years.
10
we're
years
still in it.
together, locking it down.
Let's go. Let's
Okay,
go.
so y'all chasing, you're on
Okay.
Vine, and then what?
Oh yeah. Okay. So I started to send her messages.
Did we
She
tell
sent
you
me-
the very first thing he ever? That's probably too much. The
No,
first thing
go
he ever
ahead.
said to me
Sure.
on Vine.
Level us up.
All right.
And this, and,
It's kind of a.
and so, by the way, just you'll know when we say this, I still wasn't a fully restored person
Right.
at this time. So he
Me neither, man.
he wrote.
That's why I wasn't like. Okay. So first of all, can I tell you? real quick.
I'm dying to know what you
I
wrote.
knew. I will tell you. But like, here's the thing: is that when we first met, I already knew I was in a place of sort of like I had been hit. Like my faith had been. I was dashed up against the rocks in a lot of ways. A lot of church hurt stuff, people hurt stuff, So I was starting my my deconstruction phase, sort of like and by that I mean like trying to take off what wasn't working, and you know what I mean. And I was trying to focus, and I was like, I'm gonna be a better person at this point. I'm gonna do this, and So when I first connected with Nikki, it took me like a year until I actually reached out to her seriously. But I did send her some funny.
He broke the ice with. He wrote B.
What is it?
BEWBS.
BEWBS.
Boobs.
What?
I know.
Boobs.
All right, so
Boobs.
if you'd
That's
seen
your
the Vine,
opener?
Yes.
dude, if you'd have seen the Vine, it would have made sense.
And I was like, oh, he's so great.
And it was more like this, Matt.
I love him already.
Matt, this is how it looked, Matt. I saw the picture. I go, oh. I saw the Vine. I go, oh, boobs. You know what I mean?
Rex dying.
That's the first thing I ever said to my wife.
That's awesome.
I was in the same
So
wavelength.
by the time you guys talk about it and you're like, I get you, and you sing
Yeah.
Father Abraham and all that,
Yeah.
the boobs had already happened?
Yeah, that
Boobs
had
had
already
already
happened.
happened.
That
Yeah.
was the first thing I said to her, man.
I said babes.
Babes.
Like babes, I thought it was being funny how I spelt it or whatever, So
And I'm like, he's great.
I swear I didn't think, over a decade later I'd be sitting on a podcast talking about it. So
You know.
You kids at home, don't comment. It doesn't
Yeah.
work for
It doesn't
everybody.
work.
yeah, pay attention to what you're saying.
All right, so you guys meet and
Yeah.
all this. So you sing Father Abraham. This is
Yep.
my person. Then what?
So so the first time we met, we didn't meet until like, what was it? It was over a year later. that
Over
we
a
met.
year later,
I was coming
yeah.
out to LA and I was going to stay with a good friend of mine. So I bought an open-ended ticket. Was going to be there for at least, I was like, I'm going to go for about, 3 weeks or something, and I'll buy my ticket and come back. Because I was in a publishing deal here in Nashville, and I was going to go write, work, and just bring songs back, And I hadn't been to LA in like, it had been like a year and a half or 2 years, something like that, since I'd been. So I was planning a good trip, and I called her. And I was like, hey, I'm coming in. And she's like, you got to sing at my show. You got to hang out. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I want to take you on a dinner date while I'm there
It's a
too.
dinner date. And guys in LA are like, let's hang sometime.
Yeah.
You know?
Did you laugh at Chuckle at dinner
I was
date?
like, whoa, this is serious.
Dinner
I like
date.
took him serious dinner date. But then he hadn't said anything for like, it was getting up on like 3 days before he was supposed to fly in. I'm like, he ain't scheduled no dinner date yet. So I
didn't.
told him, by the way, the night you get in, I'm having a party at my house. You should come by. He said, I'll come. So then I scheduled a party at my house
oh, so
after to ensure
you're like, crap, he called my man. I got to schedule a party now.
to ensure that I would see him. But it was like lightning in a bottle,
Yeah.
real fast. And I think it was already 8 weeks into it. He looked at me and he's like, do you know something? And I'm like, what? He's like, if we're going to work out, we need Jesus in our relationship.
Oh, dude, I love you. You said that?
Yeah.
I did. Well, and by the way, it was supposed to be a 3-week trip, and notice she said 8 weeks, right? So 8 weeks later, I'm still in LA.
He never went back
Yeah, I didn't-
besides getting his stuff.
Yeah, I just
in
went back to get my
Nashville.
stuff. Yeah, I moved to LA.
And you were at Gateway at the time doing the whole worship thing, or
No, I ended that. This is 2013-ish, right? So about that 2013 year, but I stopped at Gateway probably 2011, 12.
Okay.
So it was a few years that I hadn't been there at least, So
Wow.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, how you guys get married? You have beautiful daughter now, Frankie, and
He adopted my daughter Jaslyn from the first marriage. That was
of course he
crazy.
did. You're such a good man.
Yeah.
Oh, whatever, man.
And
really
so,
are.
and
You're a
it
good-
changes their name on the birth certificate. Like her birth dad, his name is not even legally anywhere,
Which is
and
dope.
it's Edgar.
Yep.
And when they met, it was like they're like very similar. And he's like, "You're my kid," and she's like, "You're my dad." There's no one else that would be my dad. You know.
Yeah, our first hangout, I was taking her from one friend to another friend's house, And first time we got to hang out like for a while, I took her to lunch and I was like, what do you talk to? Like how do you talk to a girl who's, 12, 13 years old? Like what all do you talk to them about? I mean, I was just a single dude You know what I mean? Like I wasn't. So like, what do you
Boobs.
do? We sat.
Oh, I mean, not with that. Sorry, the wrong way to like.
She's just giving you an example
Not
where my
inserting
mind
that
Right.
to talk about that. By the way, I'm just saying.
No, of course. Okay, so
Eli, the wheels are coming off.
Eli, help! No, we just go to lunch that day, and I sit with Jazzy for like 3 hours.
That's tight.
and it was so.
So did she come home
So
after that?
fun.
Like, Mom, I really like it.
Oh yeah, no, she was the first one. I had dated this like finance guy before Ryan, and who did everything for Jazz, like brought her like these game consoles and she'd be like, I don't care what he can still keep buying me stuff, but this guy is not the guy for you. But I'll take his gifts.
I'll take a new
I'll
iPad.
take his stuff. And then she met Rye, who just took her out to lunch and talked to her, and she's like, "Yep, that's the
You know
first
why,
guy."
bro? You saw her.
He saw
Whoa.
her.
You saw
Exactly.
her.
That's sick. Yeah,
Yep.
that's cool.
You're cool. I stole it from you guys.
That's cool, man.
So real quick because now you guys, you're obviously doing great. You've been married for 10 years. One thing I wanted to talk about before we close this out, I do want to concentrate, or not concentrate, but I want to talk about like the church hurt. Mm-hmm. What did they do to you, and how do you get over it?
Right. Well, the things that weren't as permissible as they are now. Okay, hold on. There were things that weren't as permissible in just the last decade when it comes to working in or being at a church, And I knew that these are more preferences. Here's the rules. Here's what we abide by here. And here's how this goes. Okay. And here's what we expect from you. And I did my best. I was always trying to stay on track, always trying to people please. I mean, I'm learning this later. I was really good at that part, and really trying to be there. And then once I got to that space, and then I was, as I got more leadership, or maybe some more eyes were kind of set on me, I felt more and more scrutiny as well, and I knew that was wrong. Something inside of me was like, I don't want this. I don't want this. I'm not that, and I did notice a difference between me and others. Like there's some other people who really fit well in that Christian culture, man. They don't have the same proclivities I do. They have a totally different mind. They have things they're interested in. It just so happened that I love the music and the culture and all the things, and that put a lot of eyes on me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
like they put eyes on, and
I'm not saying anything against them, but dude, look
No.
at today. They're not writing Super Bowl commercials. They're not writing those, because that's the avenue God had. Like, you can still be a believer and in the world, but not of the world. You can still become all things to all
Yes.
people and not jeopardize,
yes.
your holiness to God.
Yeah, well,
Can I say the parallels of
Not one time did
Right.
that happen. Sorry.
Well, yeah, like you were just saying, it's like I couldn't really have successfully been a abstinent speaker on the road and having sex, premarital sex, right? So there is like a level of understanding
Right.
for that, but there's not the time and grace given to how do we pivot here? How do we take this situation and what it is and not completely cut them off, but let's help them. Let's figure out, let's ask questions. I think questions are so important. Why are you in this space? Why are you doing this? I would have said, my childhood, my family, it's really hard. I go home to abuse. They don't ask those questions. It's
Right.
they see the result, they see the action, and nothing that leads up
Right.
to that action. So same with Ryan, like, well, where are you at? What can we do to ensure that you're following kind of what we want for our ministry and what fits what that is, but with love and with grace. And there's just, as we saw yesterday on Instagram, when people fall publicly, people have opinions and they come and it's like this hammer goes down and it's like, you don't deserve this. People try to tell you what you deserve. But if you look at yourself, we've all failed someone in our lives.
Well,
We've all done something wrong.
Let's talk about that, and then we'll close on that, and then I'm going to ask you guys to sing a song together, but no pressure. And we'll close, but let's talk about, because we were talking about that offline. Carl Lentz, huge, very dynamic, very famous pastor under Hillsong, had a pretty big fall of infidelity like 2 years ago or so, and went off the radar. None of us really heard of it, didn't post on Instagram or anything. Now we just got news yesterday. He's coming back at Transformation Church under Pastor Mikey Todd, who's one of the biggest pastors in America right now, has a huge church. We looked at the Instagram. It is filled with hate, no grace. How can you do this? And to be honest, I see both sides in terms of, let's say the religious side. Homie had a really big church back in the day, had a really big bad fall, and now he's coming back under a really, really big church. Is that the best option? I don't know. I'm not in this position. And then the other side, like, I know all the hate and all that, there's no grace in what people are giving him at all. And it's like, dude, y'all better be careful, because what you judge today can be knocking on your door tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, so you guys have been through it. Yes. I haven't. And I'm coming to you. What's the answer? What's the right way?
Also, the knives were sharp for Carl before it happened. You know what I'm saying? People are jealous of him in general. Let's just speak to it. There's people who are like, he's too good looking and cool and charismatic, right?
Yep.
He seems like a star.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
So there's also added hate, in my opinion, for Carl, because if Carl was not as good looking and came back, people might be more chill about it. But he's too gifted. God gave him too much. And so now, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not literally, but so people have a problem with it, and they're actually, some people are actually jealous of Carl. So let me just...
But they'll never admit it. It's not jealousy.
Yeah, I'm just worried about him preaching. He can't do this. Well, why are you so wanting to control him so hard? Who do you think... You know what I mean? Like, where's that coming from? It's really... is it to protect you? Is it to protect the church? Is that what you're doing? Are you the church protector now? Right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, so...
And what's the timeline? When is someone deemed okay? Like, when do you
everyone thinks it's okay, apparently. Sorry.
Yeah, like when has he had enough time to evaluate his life and see what happened to his family and what his kids went through and all of that? We don't know the inner workings of his life. I think we can only pray and champion for that to resolve and his family to thrive, and this to be a chance that he goes, I'm not gonna ruin this second chance. I'm gonna use it to help heal other marriages. We don't know.
So would you say, go ahead.
I got something burning in me, bro. But Jesus did not say you need to trust Carl Lentz. Everybody who knows that he's the pastor now. Jesus didn't say trust him with your whole heart. He said trust me, right? What did he say to do to the sinner? Forgive them. Don't judge them lest you be what?
Judged.
How about the plank in your... Come on, somebody. We're not supposed to judge people. We're not supposed to be holding Carl's feet to the fire to make sure that, he's paid enough before he comes back. I even saw in the comments earlier, somebody said he needs to start at the bottom and come up. Like, what does that even mean? You mean the bottom of the organization? Is that what you're saying? So you want to tell Mike Todd how to run his organization? I'm sorry. I get so I get upset at these ways of thinking that enter people's minds that are Christians. They get online and they start typing hate or judging people. And literally it doesn't work this way or that way. It doesn't work.
This is why I'm asking. I'm going to be humble and say this is because I don't know the answer. I only have my opinion.
Right.
Like, that's why I'm asking two people who have been at the top, fell to the bottom, and got freaking trampled on and eaten when they were there by the Christians.
Right.
And do you know who I remember?
Good question.
I don't remember anything too specifically that people told me that was negative. I don't remember the people that had something to say and took my songs off or told me I couldn't sing at their church. But I remember one guy in Sarasota who's a part of my testimony, who's a pastor, who when I was 18 years old and I had a 4-week-old baby, he was the only one who didn't cancel my show.
Boom.
And I went there 4 weeks after I had a baby.
Boom.
And they held her in the front row and they gave me a check and they said, we're not canceling you. You can come to our church. And it's that kindness. And I think that people don't realize that that's a part of my testimony. What brought me back in was the song, it's his kindness that leads to repentance. It is the grace of God. It's that thing we sing about, he'll leave the 99, the overwhelming love of God. That's the reality of it. And that's what will make the difference in people's lives. Even for Carl, it's not going to be those people hating. It's going to be those ones that say, I still believe in you and I'm praying for you. That's what we remember. That's God's heart for us.
Mm-hmm.
There's your level up moment right there. It's the goodness of God that leads to repentance, the kindness of God. Without Eli restructuring everything and hooking stuff up, can you guys both just from that microphone, don't get mad at me, can you do God is so good the way you did it so good on Instagram? And just we'll end on that. God,
we could just sing like a hook of it.
I just want people to hear
God, yeah.
We're just sing it together, unison, or
so good. Well, I stay.
Okay, you stay there.
I stay there, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
This
we
is
go.
how it works.
We're watching professionals work. Go ahead.
God. Where we go? You went 3, 2. God is so good.
God is so good. God is so good. He's so good to me.
I'm hugging you through the microphone.
I love you, Matt.
I freaking love you guys. Can we give it up for Ryan Edgar and Nikki Leonti?
Thanks, Corey.
Why are you still Nikki Leonti? Why aren't you Nikki Edgar?
It's a lot to change up, like just paperwork
Too much-
wise.
okay.
But I'll do it.
Is it the paper?
Should I do it? Should I do it?
Yeah, do it now, babe.
Right now, we did it. We changed it on Level Up.
Some people have actually thought
Some
some people have had it, but like Ryan, you need to. And I'm like,
why doesn't she have your name?
bro, I was in my 30s
has
when
my
we got
heart.
married, bro. As well, I'm not like, what is this?
Some people have their husband's names, but they don't have their hearts.
Yeah,
He's
Carrie
not my
Underwood's
heart.
not Carrie Fisher.
No.
She's married to Mike
Or he
Fisher.
wants it
She's
all.
Carrie Underwood
Carrie
because it's just
Underwood.
that's the
Yeah.
dude. I totally get
I
it.
may surprise him one day.
Let's go,
Let's take it.
Get ready, get ready.
dude. I love you guys. Where can everybody follow you?
At Nikki Leonti on Instagram,
At the Ryan Edgar on Instagram.
and all the other handles are our names. So yeah.
I love it,
all under handles.
dude. You guys, I freaking love you guys.
We
Thank
love
you so much for coming
You're
on.
awesome and you're amazing.
Don't y'all
and
love
you're
that?
intentional.
Everybody.
And every place he goes
It's true.
lights up.
Yeah,
So
I
thank
see you giving all the time, bro.
Yes.
That's what I see. I see you giving.
Don't, you're gonna make me cry
All the time.
Dude, I like to see people like you said. Like Jesus is always in season. Like people know me in the Chick-fil-A drive-thru and in the McDonald's because I see them.
Yeah.
Just see people.
See people.
People are hurting. They don't need your religion or your opinion. They need your love.
Yeah, buddy.
Go out there and love the hell out of people. This has been another session. What is it? Podcast level show of Level Up.
Whatever.
It's been another episode of Level Up. I love you guys. Like, subscribe, share, follow my friends, and go love the hell out of people. God bless you.